The Whispering Forest. Part 2. The Shadowed Truth. Darkness wrapped around Elric like a living thing. It was not the absence of light but something deeper, something that pressed against his skin, his bones, his mind. The whispers grew louder, overlapping in a cacophony of voices, some pleading, some warning, some laughing in eerie amusement. Then, just as suddenly as they had engulfed him, they ceased. Elric stood in a place that was wrong. The trees here were different, twisted, ancient beyond reckoning, their bark slick with something that gleamed under the faint glow of an unseen moon. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic. Elric, the whisper returned, singular now, and unmistakable. His mother's voice. He turned sharply, his pulse roaring in his ears. Shadows moved at the edges of his vision, shifting between the trees, but there, just beyond a jagged archway of roots, stood a figure. A woman with golden hair, her form half shrouded in mist. "Mother." His voice cracked. He took a step forward, then hesitated. "Is it really you?" The figure raised a trembling hand. "You should not have come." Pain lanced through Elric's chest. "They told me you were gone. That you had been taken. But you're here." Miriam Thornbrook's eyes, once warm and full of life, were shadowed with something unreadable. "Yes, I am here. And so are they." Elric's breath hitched as the forest stirred around him. The shadows between the trees deepened, elongating, and then, impossibly, they stepped forward. Figures, barely human, their forms draped in shifting black mist, their eyes hollow voids. "The lost," his mother whispered. "Those who listened too closely." A chill crawled up Elric's spine. He could feel the weight of their gaze, the hunger in it. "What do they want?" Miriam's expression was pained. "The same thing the forest wants. To be heard, to be known." The whispers returned, softer now, curling around Elric's thoughts. He clutched his head, gritting his teeth. "The truth, Elric. You sought the truth." Through the storm of voices, his mother's voice rose above the rest. "The village fears the forest because they wronged it." Elric's eyes snapped to hers. "What do you mean?" She glanced at the hollow tree behind him, its bark pulsing like something alive. "Eldermere was not always the village you know. It was once a part of this forest. But the elders severed it, stole its magic, and built their lives upon its bones." The wind howled through the trees, carrying voices that had been silent for too long. "The village elders made a pact," Miriam continued. "To silence the whispers, to bury the past. But the forest does not forget." Elric's mind reeled. His entire life had been a lie. The forest wasn't cursed. It was wounded. Betrayed. "And you, why did they cast you out?" His mother's gaze darkened. "Because I remembered. Because I tried to make amends. And because I too." Elric's hands clenched into fists. "Then what do I do? How do I fix this?" Miriam hesitated. "The forest has waited for justice, Elric. It has waited for you." A heavy silence settled between them. He knew what she was asking, what the forest was asking. Eldermere had taken. Now, it had to give. "Come." His mother reached for him. "It's time to end this." Elric swallowed hard. The weight of generations pressed upon his shoulders. He had stepped into the forest seeking answers, and now he had them. But the truth demanded a price. And Elric Thornbrook was ready to pay it. With one last look at the world he had left behind, he took his mother's hand and stepped forward, deeper into the whispering forest, where the past waited to be reclaimed. And far away, in the village of Eldermere, the winds began to whisper once more. The Whispering Forest. Part 3. The Price of Truth. The moment Elric took his mother's hand, the forest shifted. The air grew heavier, thick with the weight of something ancient and unseen. The whispers softened, weaving together like a song, a chorus of voices that had been waiting far too long to be heard. Elric's heart pounded as he followed Miriam deeper into the woods. The gnarled trees loomed over them, their branches twisting in unnatural angles, casting shadows that moved as if alive. The forest pulsed around them, responding to their presence, guiding them toward something unseen but inevitable. His mother glanced back at him, her golden hair shimmering with an otherworldly glow. "You are the key, Elric," she said softly. "The forest has chosen you." "Chosen me for what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Miriam's expression was solemn. "To break the cycle. To bring justice." Elric swallowed hard. The village of Eldermere had built itself upon the bones of the forest, stealing its magic and silencing its whispers. Now, the past demanded to be reckoned with. They walked until they reached a clearing unlike any other in the forest. At its center stood an ancient stone altar, cracked and covered in moss, its surface etched with runes that pulsed with dim light. The air here vibrated with unseen energy. Miriam stepped forward, placing her hand on the altar. "This is where it began," she murmured. "Where the elders performed the ritual that severed Eldermere from the forest." Elric traced the runes with his fingers. "What do I have to do?" His mother hesitated. "The forest does not seek destruction, Elric. It seeks restoration. The elders bound its power, cutting it off from the land. You must undo what they did. You must restore the balance." He took a shaky breath. "And how do I do that?" She turned to him, her gaze heavy with sorrow and hope. "By offering something in return." Elric's blood ran cold. "A sacrifice." Miriam nodded. "A willing one." The realization settled over him like a stone in his gut. The village had taken from the forest, and now the forest demanded something in return. His mind raced. What could he offer? His life, his soul. Before he could ask, the whispers returned, stronger than before, speaking as one. "Blood was spilled to silence us. Blood must be spilled to free us." Elric's hands trembled. "They want me too." "Not your blood," Miriam interrupted gently. "The elders." His breath caught. "But the elders are still in Eldermere," his mother finished. "And they have lived their lives untouched by the price they should have paid long ago." A sharp wind rustled through the clearing, as if the forest itself agreed. Elric's thoughts spun. His whole life, he had believed the elders were protectors of the village, wise leaders who safeguarded its people. But they had lied. They had stolen. They had condemned his mother and countless others to the forest's grasp. Now, justice called for them. He clenched his fists. "Then I'll bring them here." Miriam smiled sadly. "Be careful, my son. They will not come willingly." The return to Eldermere. Elric retraced his path through the forest, the whispers guiding his steps. The village gates loomed ahead, their wooden beams worn but sturdy. He stepped through them and found Eldermere unchanged, the same cobbled streets, the same flickering lanterns. But now, the air felt different. He could hear it in the wind, in the rustling of the leaves. The forest was watching. He moved swiftly, making his way to the town hall where the elders convened. The building was grand in comparison to the simple homes surrounding it, its wooden beams darkened with age. He pushed the doors open, stepping inside. The elders, 5 of them, cloaked in deep burgundy robes, sat in their high-backed chairs, their faces unreadable as they regarded him. Elder Rowan, the eldest among them, leaned forward. "Elric Thornbrook," he said, his voice steady. "You've returned." Elric met his gaze with a determination he hadn't known he possessed. "I know the truth." A murmur ran through the elders. Elder Isolde, a sharp-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair, narrowed her eyes. "What truth?" "That the village was built on stolen magic," Elric said. "That you severed it from the forest, took what was not yours, and condemned generations to live under a lie." Silence. Then Rowan sighed. "I see Miriam has spoken to you." Elric's fists clenched. "You banished her because she refused to be part of your deception." Rowan's expression remained impassive. "We did what was necessary to protect the village. By silencing the forest." Elric shot back. "By cursing it." Isolde's lips pressed into a thin line. "The forest was dangerous. We did what had to be done." Elric took a step closer. "And now, it demands justice." The room darkened. A gust of wind howled through the open door, carrying with it the whispers of the forest. The lanterns flickered violently. Rowan stood. "You're dealing with, boy." Elric's voice was firm. "I understand perfectly. The forest has waited long enough. You will come with me." Rowan's expression hardened. "And if we refuse?" The wind slammed the doors shut behind him. Shadows crept along the walls. The whispers grew louder, forming words that sent a shiver down every spine in the room. "You will come, or we will take you." The elders paled. They had controlled the forest for so long, kept it at bay with their rituals and secrecy, but now, their past had come calling. Elric gestured toward the door. "Choose." One by one, the elders rose. The reckoning. They walked in silence, led by Elric through the darkened forest. The trees leaned closer, branches reaching, whispering. The elders flinched at every sound, their stolen power unraveling in the presence of the very force they had sought to contain. When they reached the clearing, Miriam was waiting. The elders froze. Miriam, Rowan breathed, horror flickering in his eyes. She regarded them with quiet sorrow. You knew this day would come. Rowan turned to Elric. You don't have to do this. Elric's gaze was unwavering. Yes, I do. The whispers surged. The altar glowed. The forest stirred. The elders screamed. One by one, they were consumed, not by fire or shadow, but by the very thing they had sought to silence. The forest took them, reclaiming what had been stolen. The wind howled, the trees trembled, and then, silence. Miriam exhaled, relief softening her features. It is done. Elric's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Is it over? She placed a hand on his cheek. The forest is free, and so are you. For the first time in generations, the whispering forest was silent, not in sorrow, but in peace. And as the sun rose over Eldermere, its people woke to a new world, one where the whispers no longer carried